Hello, my name is Jamey Mossengren, and I beat the often path by becoming a professional unicorn.
Do you hate your job? Do you feel like there's no other option for you than to just grind it out in a 9 to 5 that you hate? Well, I'm here to show you a fresh perspective with my guest on my podcast today. Street performing! As you panic hit that back button. But seriously, I'm interviewing somebody who did just that and actually made more money than before in his job. We're going to talk about that option C that few seriously consider when forming a career plan. Yes, you could always quit your job and go out and put a hat somewhere and try to collect money from an audience as a street performer. Pretty sexy stuff, right? Now, no one said it was easy, but it turns out there's a lot of freedom and personal fulfillment to be had for the right person. Jamey Mossengren quit a lucrative 9 to 5 to become a professional unicycling unicorn. But first, why should you give a shit about street performers?
Why should you give a shit?
For one, street performers make otherwise lifeless places come alive. They add excitement and character to our public spaces. From fire breathers to escape artists to violinists, there's enormous talent to be found on the street, says David Michael, a former street musician and author of Busker, Tales of a Renegade Harpist. I'd like to add that I know many harpists, who doesn't, and none of them were renegades in my experience, so I'm very, very eager to check out that particular book. An article on busk.co from Liliana Maz says, Buskers are the perfect placemaking tool. They're inexpensive, they don't require extra infrastructure, they have self-contained shows, they're already nearby, and they add a lot of local flavor to the city, and they're hugely popular with tourists. That's right, all you have to do is just let them play, and the rest happens on its own. So take note, cities, they improve them, they don't make it worse. Now, it's pretty sweet, but it's not just a gimmick. Many street performers are actually serious artists or world-class talent who have spent decades honing their craft. In fact, Street Performers offers a commercial performance opportunity for upcoming artists. And you might have known that Cirque du Soleil was originally started by collecting street performers from the streets of Quebec. So there is big potential, and many artists have gotten their start as street performers, and still many more have made tons of money and built actual careers as street performers along the way. So I'm here to talk to one of them. Here with me is Jamey Mossengren, the unicycling unicorn, about how making the decision to leave his job changed his life forever. I'm Ross Palmer, and this is Beat the Often Path. Well, hello. Welcome to the show, Jamey, first of all. Thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So there's not too many people in the world who would even dare to call themselves a professional unicorn, let alone know what that means. So already we're off to an incredible start. Tell us a little bit, what is it exactly that you do, and how the hell did you end up where you are?
Sure. So I'm actually a professional performer. So I do like a unicycling, juggling comedy show. And I travel the world doing it at different fairs and festivals, street performing, basically wherever people need entertainment, I'll go and hopefully provide some.
That sounds awesome. And before that, tell me you were a banker. Just say that you were a banker. What were you doing before you were this?
I wasn't a banker, but I was a mechanical engineer.
A mechanical engineer. Okay. So did you go to school for mechanical engineering, or how did you end up on this crazy path?
Yeah. So I went to the University of North Dakota. Got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and I tried it for 4 years at a medical company in Minnesota. And the first year or two was fun, exciting, and new, and the money was decent, and all was well. But after like the third and fourth year, I just felt like I was in jail. It was Monday through Friday at a small cubicle with no windows. You don't get much, vacation the first couple of years you're working. And I love traveling. So I just felt like I was stuck in Minnesota. I couldn't leave. I couldn't, it just felt like jail. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, I have to do this for 40 more years. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm going to go crazy if I have to do this for the rest of my life. So I just quit my job one day and decided to move to California. I had a couple of friends living in a, kind of like a big house, and they were surfing and just having fun. So I moved in with them, and I was just sitting there, part-time jobs to pay the bills. And I saw a street performer in Venice Beach, and I video recorded him do a show. It's like a 20-minute juggling show. And towards the end, I actually zoomed in when he collected his money. And then I went back home and I watched it in slow motion and I added it up. And this guy made a decent amount of money in a 20-minute show. And I did the math and I'm like, you do 3, 4, 5 shows a day. Like, that's good money. I think I can do that. So I decided right then and there I would try to street perform. And that's how I got started.
And did you have any of the skills that you needed beforehand? Were you already a unicyclist or a juggler, or were you starting from zero?
Yeah, so I actually was a really good unicyclist. Growing up, my brother and I showed up one day at my grandma's house, and she had a unicycle, and she had bought it just for the grandkids because she lived on a farm. And whenever we went to visit her, we would always be bored and be like, that sucks. There's nothing to do. And then one day, there was a unicycle she bought at a garage sale, and so every time we visited, my brother and I would just practice, and he was always the older, better, wiser, brother that could do everything better, and of course he could ride it farther and longer. But eventually, we joined a unicycle club in Minnesota, one of the biggest unicycle clubs in the world, actually, called the Twin City Unicycle Club. And he kind of faded away and stopped doing it, and I continued doing it. And I started competing and traveling nationally and internationally. And so it's always been a hobby of mine. And then when I decided to street perform, I could juggle a unicycle, but I didn't know how to perform. I had no idea about street performing. It was a whole different ball game. And I thought it would be easy. And the first, I got a pen and paper and I wrote down like a little script and what I was going to say and do. And on paper, it seemed great. And right. I went out to Huntington Beach the first day ever and worked like super hard, doing all my hard tricks for an hour, just sweating. I had a hat out and I made like $2 in an hour. And I was devastated. I was like, oh, this is not going to work. And I was actually packing up. I was giving up. I'm like, all right, this sucks. Bad idea. And as I was packing up, this old lady came up and gave me a $20 bill. And she's like, I've been watching you from over there for a while, and you're really good at what you do. Keep doing what you love. And then a light bulb went off into my head. I'm like, okay, maybe that's the universe telling me I can do this as a job. I just have to figure out how to do it. And so over the next couple of months, I would watch other performers and kind of see what they did, how to keep a crowd, how to get a crowd. And I just kind of learned from watching and trial and error. Like, that's one of the best things about being a street performer is you instantly know if something works. If you say or do something and the crowd leaves, you're never going to do that again. Mm-hmm. If you say something and do something and they laugh or they applaud, that's good. And you're going to keep that in the show. So you learn really fast on the streets.
Yeah, people always talk, comedians and various other people in the similar profession about how hard it is to develop 1 minute or 5 minutes of what they call material. I just read Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, and he talks about how it took him 10 years to build what he thought was a good 25 minutes of material. And that's something that sounds crazy to the average person. They think, how hard could it be to keep people captivated for 25 minutes? But did you feel that as well? It's hard, right? So how long did it take you before you felt like you had an actual 20 minutes of good material?
It probably took a good year. The first year I still had, some of the part-time jobs just to help pay the bills. And, I could see my hats going up slowly. I would get better at, what I was doing and getting bigger crowds and having a better hat line. That's where you ask for the money. And so I could, I kept track of everything and I could just see it slowly kind of creeping up. And about a year after I started, I was able to quit all my part-time jobs. And then that was 14 years ago and I haven't looked back.
So did you realize pretty early on that you had a legitimate talent for doing these kinds of tricks?
Yeah, growing up, like I knew I would compete at competitions
Yeah.
and I would win some gold medals and stuff. So I knew I was a good unicyclist, but not a good performer. And I learned, that first year, it's not about what you do, it's how you do it. And you gotta keep the audience entertained, and comedy and jokes, that's your number one go-to, because they like tricks and they like watching hard stuff, but they get bored after a few minutes. If you're just doing tricks and stuff like that, they'll walk away. So you gotta keep telling jokes and making them laugh, making them smile. And it's also nice to have like a big grand finale that they see what's coming up. So they're like, oh, we don't want to leave because we want to see that guy ride that 12-foot unicycle unicorn thing.
You've got like a bag
so
of props on the side, a shopping, all these things, and they're wondering, when is he going to bring that out?
Exactly. Yep. And you just, you got to build it up slowly, and you got to, keep telling people, just a few minutes, I'll be riding that. And then you just keep getting interrupted by things. But first I got to warm up, and then you do some warm up tricks. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to climb up, but actually, I need a volunteer, a little kid, and you get a kid out and do some jokes and tricks with a kid. And so you just kind of keep stalling. And what happens is the crowd gets bigger and bigger the more you stall. If they're clapping and laughing, the crowd's going to get bigger. And the bigger the crowd, the more money you're going to make.
Do you feel that you've fully refined your act at this point? Do you feel like you know exactly what you're going to do each time you get out there?
Yep, I know. Like it's pretty perfect for me right now. I know what I say and do works, and every now and then I'll try some new things just to see, if I can add something or. But pretty much my show is almost identical from day to day, show to show. Because I know it works, and if it works, then why change it?
We interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast for a silly sketch. Son, it's time you got serious about your career. Oh God, here we go again. Now listen to me. I want you to have stability. I want you to get a job where you'll be well taken care of. Dad, I'm not doing it. It's time to get serious, son. Look, the circus is in town. Just promise me you'll try to join it. I'm not gonna be like you, Dad. I'm not gonna join the circus. And give me one good reason why not. I don't want to work for a salary. I just want to collect money directly from people while making them happy. I'm gonna become a street performer. Oh God, what have I done? What have I done? My son! My son! And now, back to the seriousness. My first introduction to this kind of thing, I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. And there's this giant thing. Maybe you've probably performed there, but there was this thing called Busker Fest, a giant celebration downtown where they had a whole bunch of buskers, street performers, and it was a thing that people went from the city to. So it was supremely entertaining to me, and I never had realized before, like you said, that there could be a way to make a living from doing these kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah. Like Busker Fest are my favorite because they're, set up for us, for street performers, and people go there to be entertained, and they bring money and they know what's going to happen. We're on the street. You're just stopping random people where they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know you're going to ask for money. And so it's a little bit harder. I personally like that challenge, and it's kind of fun to go somewhere new or wherever, and you just see this nice open space with people, and they have no idea what's going to take place there in the next half an hour, and how you're going to create this magical energy and turn it into a theater outdoor. And it's fun having that challenge of trying to get a crowd and keep a crowd, and then most importantly, get money from the crowd. But busker festivals are nice because you don't have to do that. Like, people are already there. You already have a crowd. Unfortunately, the U.S. doesn't have many of them. We don't really have the culture for them. And the space, a lot of cities aren't made with street performing in mind. Where if you go to Europe, there's a lot of outdoor plazas and squares, and it's set up a lot better over there. And Canada actually has some of the best busking festivals. They have a good sense of humor. They're very generous, and they love street performers. And they have some of the biggest and best festivals up there. So much so that like the Edmonton Fringe, it's so good that you actually have to pay $600 to go in a lottery to try to get a spot to perform for the 10 days of the festival.
Wow.
You do get some of the money back, or most of the money back, if you don't win the lottery, but it's that good that you actually have to pay to get a spot.
And that brings up an interesting question, because I lived in Europe for many years, and I remember some people that I knew wanted to perform in the Dam Square, which is the main square of Amsterdam. But there they have some kind of permitting system. You can't just show up. You have to reserve a spot. And it's somewhat competitive. Is that something that you have to deal with? Do you have to get permits, or do you have permission in some places and not others to do what you do?
Yeah, so, every place is totally different. Some places you need permits. Usually they're pretty easy to get and pretty cheap. What I usually do if I don't know is I'll just go somewhere and start performing. And if I get caught, they're just going to tell me the rules and be like, you can't perform here. You have to get a permit, or if there's other performers, they'll tell me, you actually have to do this first, or, so yeah, it's different all over. In a lot of places, it's just a first come, first serve. So you create a queue, a line, and you show up. And if there's a couple people in front, they do a show, then you do a show, and then it just keeps repeating. Most places are pretty friendly. We all get along for the most part, which is awesome. We become friends as a small kind of network. There's not a ton of street performers out there, so we see each other at all these different, fairs and festivals, which is nice. But there are certain places where they're not as friendly. And actually, Venice Beach is probably one of the worst places to street perform.
I can imagine that.
The break dancers there are really, really quite mean.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of them, and I actually lived there for a year trying to perform, and they would, steal my stuff and threaten to hit me and slash my tires, and it was not a good environment. Plus, you have all the drugs and homeless people, and you can make decent money there, but it's not a fun making money experience.
Where are you based out of now?
So right now I'm originally from Minnesota, but I have a van, and I just travel so much for work that I'm don't really have a base right now. I just kind of follow the festival scene and just go where the wind takes me.
That's remarkable.
Another problem that street performers run into are cops. Especially in the US, they look down on street performers, and a lot of places they don't like street performers because they associate it with homeless people, because sometimes you get beggars and druggies, and there are some street performers that are pretty bad, and they are homeless and they are on drugs. But if you do it right, you can actually make a career out of it. But the cops, when they see you, they want to scare you off. They want to get rid of you because they don't like it. But it's actually a First Amendment right, and so legally in the U.S., you don't need a permit anywhere. I know some places have permits, but people have sued the city and won because it's illegal. It's a First Amendment right. And I have this little card I keep on me. It's like a get out of jail for free card.
Cool.
And it just says, I know my rights. I'm allowed to perform here. And so whenever I get caught by or stopped by a cop, the first thing I do is I pull out this and I'm like, look, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. You might want to read this card because I know my rights. And 99% of the times they read it, leave and I never see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And it has all the court cases listed on the backside that have won. And it's a really nice car to have if you are doing a lot of street performing.
At this point in your life, what would your goal be? I mean, it sounds like you've settled into a pretty nice groove. You could, like you said, you can kind of continue doing this for as long as you want. What's your next goal, or do you just want to keep doing this? Are you fulfilled and happy in the moment?
I just want to keep doing this. I love what I do. My whole goal in life is to make as many people happy as I can. And if I can get paid to do that, that's awesome. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
If, eventually I'll become too old to perform or not be able to do as much physical stuff as I can right now. And I hope to still perform, but maybe do less of the dangerous stuff, maybe do a more comedy-based show. I wouldn't mind being a circus teacher, in the future, teaching other people how to perform and unicycle and juggle. But for now, I'm pretty happy with how things are going, and especially now that the things are opening up again, and festivals are coming back, and street performance is allowed, and it's nice to. And like the last couple of months, people are so appreciated. Like they just really love live entertainment. They missed it, and they're like clapping extra loud, and they're laughing extra loud. Like the shows have just been amazing because I think people really did miss that connection and
you see that energy. Yeah, people realize how valuable it was. And to your point, like if you don't support this, then street performing dies. And now people, I think more than ever, they realize this was something that added materially to my life and to my existence.
It's nice to feel that again and be back out there performing for sure.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I love your story. I think it's a truly remarkable story. And it's proof that if you don't like where you're at, if you don't like what you're doing, you can take your situation into your own hands. You can take control. You don't have to be a victim of your circumstance. And, I think, again, with the directness or the layer of abstraction, like when you work at a job, the company is making money in the marketplace, but you are getting money from the company. And often it's setting a cap on what you can make per hour. And no matter whether you work harder or less hard or do good, you have, for a lot of people, a cap. You will make $20 an hour, let's just say, and that's it. But the company might be making billions or trillions. Who knows what they're making? You're not connected to any of that. But when you take it into your own hands, you start realizing, okay, what is the value of a literal dollar? What does $1 mean to an actual person? And how do I extract $1 from 50 different people, 100 different people in the moment? So you have like a direct connection to the public, to the people, to money in a way that I think a lot of people don't fully understand, which I think is really cool. And it can be scary. It can be hard. It can be extremely difficult.
Definitely scary.
Right.
Yeah. When I quit my engineering job, it was super scary because I didn't know what I was going to do. My parents were like, "Are you crazy? You're going to like quit your good engineering job and become a street performer?"
Right.
Like they did not understand it. And like street performers don't have the best, like, I don't know, we're looked down upon for the most part, I think, in general. We kind of get classed as like a beggar, and not only like it's weird, but my parents finally understood I did the right thing a couple years later when they actually saw one of my shows and they saw I was making it and happy. They're like, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
But it's to quit your job and try something new, super scary, but it makes you feel alive, like you don't know what's going to happen, and it's a good thing, I think, to change things. People get stuck in a rut, and sometimes you just need that big change to change your life.
But I'm glad you're out there in it. I'm glad you're doing your thing. I think the world is better that you're in it. So we're reaching the end of our hour here, but I just want to thank you.
I was kind of like, yeah, you're welcome. I kind of like to finish by saying I'd like to thank my grandma for having that unicycle. And like looking back, like I would have never thought that would have changed my life. And another key moment was when that old lady came up and gave me that $20 bill after my first show. If she didn't do that, I probably would have never tried it again. I was that devastated. And it's amazing how one random act of kindness can change someone's life. And I don't know who it was. I wish I could thank her now if I found her. And by that time, my grandma that had the unicycle had died. So I like to think that was like her spirit, kind of like encouraging me to keep doing it. Yeah, I mean, who knows? But
love that.
It's amazing how one person can just change your life.
And if you're listening and if you're watching out there right now, let that be a lesson. Be that one person in your life. Support somebody today or this week.
Yeah.
Show somebody support because you don't know who in your life might be on the verge of quitting something. So support them. Be that grandma. That's my message from the takeaway. Be that grandma. Show somebody support. If you've been a passive observer, be active. Anyways, that's my sign off. Jamey Mossengren, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. I love your story. I think it's awesome. Thanks for reaching out. Truly a pleasure to get to know you.
Thanks for having me.
Keep on rocking. And with that, the official podcast is over.
All right.
Again, if you enjoyed this show, if it's inspired you, if any of these episodes have ever inspired you in any way, or if it's changed your life or helped you think about your own problems in any kind of new way, all I ask is that you subscribe anywhere. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts to the show. Rate the show 5 stars in Apple Podcasts. Leave a kind review on Apple Podcasts. Do anything you can personally do to help me grow this show. Let me know that you're out there. Let me know that you appreciate it. Let me know that you're listening, and I will forever be grateful. Be that person. Anyways, thanks for listening. I really appreciate your time, and I will see you next week on the Beat the Offline Path podcast. I'm Ross Palmer.